You got to get scared that people who are not criminals are getting like lassoed up and deported. That's the thing about politics, right? Never admit your fault. Never admit you're wrong.
It's so dumb.
And this is the thing we're seeing with the signal thing, and this is the thing we're seeing with this.
It's one of the worst places on earth, that prison. I can't imagine what they're doing to him. Every day that goes by is a travesty. Get him out of there.
You got to get scared that people who are not criminals are getting like lassoed up and deported and sent to like El Salvador prisons.
With a bunch of these Trinidad guys, allegedly they got one guy who, at least one guy who wasn't a criminal, who was just a gay barber who I think, according to the story, came here legally. He was here legally. That's what they said.
Joe Rogan and Konstantin Kisin weighed in on the wrongful deportation of a Venezuelan migrant who was sent to a maximum security prison in El Salvador, with ICE claiming that he was a member of Tren Aragua. However, it appears that is not the case. In fact, he wasn't even in the United States illegally. He was here legally. He had a legitimate asylum claim. He came in through a port of entry and made that asylum claim. And his name's André Hernandez. He's a gay makeup artist who's been an outspoken critic of Venezuela. And I just feel like it's pretty obvious he's not a Tren Aragua gang member.
Trump is under fire for the deportation of a gay Venezuelan makeup artist for allegedly being part of a gang. I'm all for deporting illegal migrants and without a doubt migrant gang members. But let's not get carried away and start deporting individuals that are potentially here legally and with no criminal record. Let's follow due process. Now the Trump administration is feeling the heat. Let's get into it.
Yeah, they don't even allow gay people into the gang. So among 1,000 reasons why he's not a gang member. So this is what happens when you don't do due process.
Exactly.
Because the courts are supposed to check. Oh, is he a gang member or isn't he? Oh, is he undocumented or isn't he? Did he come here legally or not? Because if you don't check, you get people who did come here legally and that aren't in a gang. And that's why, like, if he did this without doing it in a dumb way, and he just rounded up the actual gang and made sure, then shipped them off, some people would still be mad that he's sending him to a hellhole in El Salvador. But overall, the American people would be massively on his side.
Yeah, and look, I want to be 100% clear. Everyone, including individuals who are suspected of being gang members, and there's actual evidence, showing that they're part, doesn't matter. You need to go through the proper channels. There needs to be due process. There's a reason why due process exists. And if you think it's okay to just throw it away when it comes to individuals who the federal government is simply accusing unilaterally of doing something criminal, well, I mean, you're really allowing so much power to be concentrated in the federal government to the point where they can accuse anyone of anything, and you don't get your day in court. That's crazy. That is absolutely insane. And I'm really happy that people are waking up to how insane that really is. Now, in this case, we're talking about a Venezuelan migrant who made a legitimate asylum claim through the proper channels. He was in the country legally. He's sent to El Salvador, meaning a third country, to a detention facility for hardened criminals and terrorists. That's CCOT. That's insane. Now, he had sought asylum in the United States through a port of entry, but the Trump administration argues that he's part of Tren Aragua because he has gang tattoos. Oh, interesting. So, they make the claim. I want to see the gang tattoos. Maybe they have a legitimate argument here. Here's what the tattoos look like. Here are the tattoos that ICE declared were evidence that this guy, gay makeup artist who came to a port of entry seeking asylum from Venezuela, was a member of a vicious gang. I'm not making this up. This is it. Mom and dad with crowns over them. Those are not gang tattoos. But apparently it didn't matter because despite the fact that it's obvious those aren't gang tattoos, his lawyers have not been able to reach him since March 15th. And after interviewing him, he says he is not a member of the gang. Somehow an ICE officer concludes that despite all that, his 2 crown tattoos and mom and dad written under them are consistent with those of a Tren Aragua member.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. They're just lying. So with that context in mind, And knowing that this is what Rogan and Kisin are talking about, let's hear more of what they had to say.
I think a human being plucked out of nowhere and ending up in a country he's never been in a maximum security prison with gang members, seems like a bad thing to happen to me.
It's horrific. It's horrific.
I don't think that should be controversial.
No, that's not controversial at all. And this is the thing, measured twice, cut once. This is this is kind of crazy that could be possible. That's horrific. And that's bad for the cause. Like, the cause is, let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees. But let's not innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with the gangs. And then, like, how long before that guy can get out? Can we figure out how to get him out? Is there any plan in place to alert the authorities that they've made a horrible mistake and correct it?
Well, if you think about it from a government perspective, and this is where I think it gets quite sinister, is once you've done that, the incentive structure is never going to be to admit that and deal with it. The incentive structure is to say nothing, to cover it up, to pretend it didn't happen.
But
right?
that is horrible.
So someone ends up in a black hole. But we've seen it. We've seen it in every country, including in America.
But that's the thing about politics, right? Never admit your fault. Never admit you're wrong.
And there it is. The government screws up, someone gets vanished into a third world dungeon, and the plan is pretend it didn't happen. That's not just incompetence, that's strategy. You really think any of these bureaucrats are losing sleep over a wrongly deported gay barber? No. They're too busy covering their asses and shifting blame like it's a sport. If a system can't correct a mistake as obvious as this, what else are they sweeping under the rug?
It's so dumb.
And this is the thing we're seeing with the signal thing, and this is the thing we're seeing with this.
And there seems to be more frustration with the lack of accountability or the willingness to take responsibility for mistakes made. So far, we haven't heard anything from the Trump administration in regard to this specific individual who was sent away. But you should know that we have so far spent about $40 million to send migrants to El Salvador's CICOT. And that's according to the State Department. They apparently did an analysis and provided that analysis to senators. There was a delegation of 5 senators who even visited, I'm sorry, that's for Gitmo. So we've spent $40 million to jail 400 migrants at Guantanamo Bay. So it's not just El Salvador, we're also sending them to Guantanamo Bay, but that has become so expensive that the Trump administration quietly stopped doing that. And they actually sent about half of those 400 migrants back to the United States because of how costly it was. But I should also note that we've been paying El Salvador as well. The last time it was reported, we spent about $6 million to send migrants there. And now a federal judge has stepped in to do an emergency order to temporarily block what the Trump administration is doing. So this federal judge has issued the ruling saying that, listen, you can't do this without due process. Okay, so we're gonna do a temporary block. This is federal judge, US District Judge Brian Murphy. He's based in Boston, and he stated that the Trump administration must give those they want to deport a meaningful opportunity to seek humanitarian protection in the US. And Murphy wrote that officials may not deport someone to a so-called third country unless and until they provide the deportee and their lawyer written notice of the country to which they are being sent. Then the judge said officials must let them apply in immigration court for protection to stay in the US under the Convention Against Torture, which Congress ratified back in 1994. And then after that, the judge said the agency must await a final decision from an immigration judge. That's when the due process comes in.
Yeah, so 2 really positive developments there, because what are we most worried about in the Trump years? That they're gonna be lawless, right? So if Trump serves 4 years, creates a giant mess, but at the end of the day, we get back to America, there's elections and Democrats can win, Republicans can win.
Exactly. That's when due process comes in. You know that pesky little thing separating us from full-blown authoritarian chaos? If we're cool with skipping courts and fast-tracking deportations based on vibes and bad guesses, what stops them from doing it to you next? Doesn't matter if you're left, right, or stuck in the middle. Due process isn't optional. It's the backbone, not a courtesy.
And etc. Then it's all good. It's all good, right? So like the 4 years will be terrible, but that's the consequence of elections. So we got to work harder to win, etc. Right? So one, the courts hold up today. That's what just happened, what Anna just read you, right? So they say, no, you can't go without due process. You got to check with us first. Let's hope that Trump administration listens to the courts, so great, courts are holding so far. Then number two, I was led to believe that the entire brosphere, Joe Rogan, etc., were all Trump cultists and would never disagree with him and would never hold him accountable. Now it looks like they were holding him accountable, okay? And that's not just Rogan, that's Konstantin Kisin. So he's a guy who's on the right. I went on a show, we had a big debate, funny enough, about transgender girls in high school sports. I said they should be in high school sports, he said they shouldn't, and we had a big debate about that, but he's a free speech advocate. And I was like, well, let's see. When Trump gets into office, we'll see if you're a real free speech advocate. And look at that. Turns out, like here he is. This is not about free speech as much as more about don't send an innocent man to a jail in a foreign government, a foreign country where they're going to torture him.
It's about the fundamental right of due process.
Yes, but of human rights, rights. So he stands up for him. Great job, Konstantin, nice job, we appreciate it. Rogan stands up for it, calls it horrific. Says it shouldn't even be controversial. It's clearly wrong. Now, it is controversial. There are MAGA guys who are totally like, oh, whatever, they're not citizens, who cares? I don't know, we don't know, maybe he came in here illegally, oh, I trust Trump. Okay, that also exists, right? But here is independent media outlets and personalities going, no, not on our watch, this is wrong. Now, I said that online and some people responded, not good enough. He has to apologize to all non-Trump.
Okay, whatever. Who cares about that? But like, look, let's get back to the actual political analysis here, because the one area where Trump is still doing well, the one area where he's not polling underwater is immigration. But if more and more stories like this come out, if more and more of his supporters start speaking out against what his administration is doing with immigration, it will not bode well for Trump or the Republicans.
So here's the punchline. Trump talks tough on immigration, but if your own supporters are calling you out because ICE can't tell a gang sign from a Hallmark tattoo, you've got a problem. But don't get it twisted. The left isn't any better. They'll defend illegal crossings and sanctuary cities until your rent doubles and crime spikes, then pretend it's complex. Everyone wants to talk about human rights, but nobody wants to talk about fixing a broken immigration system that punishes the good and empowers the worst. So let me ask you this. Is it really about safety, or is it about control? Comment below and don't hold back. I want to hear your take.